text notes for the book of Numbers, plus the rest of the study questions. So you should have study questions now on the entire book of Numbers. And your text notes are for the entire book of Numbers. And the study questions, as you know, just really, really hard. So what are you laughing at? But my basic fundamental philosophy, if you want to call it philosophy, is this: that you give your time and what have you to come to class, and so whether I am effective or not, perhaps the handouts will be of such it might be of help to you later on in life. You have some material that you can use to, I've had other people who take the notes and use them to teach classes later on with. So that's kind of the way I feel about it. And so anyway, we are going to look tonight in the book of Numbers. In a few moments, we're going to pick up at chapter 4. And there, so go back and review just a bit. We're through chapter 3. And I'd like to go back and begin in Exodus chapter 40, if you don't mind. Just hold your place there at Numbers and just flip on back to Exodus chapter 40. If I can find it in my Bible. And who would like to volunteer to read verse 17 in Exodus chapter 40? Okay. Here's a verse that gives the date in which the tabernacle. The book of Exodus, as you recall, is a book that gives the instructions for the constructing of the tabernacle. God, through Moses, tells Israel just from Mount Sinai is where they are. They're given instructions how to build the tabernacle, each and every piece of furniture in it, the curtains around the tabernacle, and curtains around the court. Everything that has to do with the tabernacle is that. And so that's on the first month of the second year, on the first day of the month. Second year. When did that first year begin? Yeah, when they came out of Egyptian bondage, didn't it? You might remember the great Passover that took place in Egypt, and just prior to the Israelites coming out, and that Passover was what did they pass over? The oldest child who had the blood upon the doorpost and the lintel there, if you will. And so that began that process too. Now in the book of Numbers, in chapter 1, it says, spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tabernacle of the congregation, which means the tabernacle is there, on the first day of the second month in the second year. So how long did the Lord wait to speak to Moses in the tabernacle when it was set up? He was there on the first day, wasn't it? First day. On your handout from last week, you had a page at the top of it said Numbers. In the middle of the page had the word chronology. I'd like to go back and just review just a bit from the chronology. And then we'll have a brief review of the first 3 chapters. Then we'll get right into chapter 4. And probably go pretty close through chapter 10 tonight in our class. So, Numbers is, telling Brother Ralph, one of the most difficult thing in Numbers is reading it. But once you get the pattern down, you know so much of it, just sort of repetitive type reading. So, this is what Kohath is going to receive, and this is what Gershon is going to receive, and but the wording is identical to each and every one of them. Just change the material a little bit. And the same thing in numbering the people, same thing in making sacrifices. They had 12 tribes we'll see tonight which offered sacrifice, or the 12 chiefs of the tribes of Israel there. And they offered, one offered one day, one the next day, one, but they all offered the same thing. So reading is just the same thing. So it's not difficult in that regard. And chronology on that page there, and made point of the fact from Exodus 40:17 the tabernacle was raised up on the first month, second year, first day of the first month. of the second year. And so let me go back. Is that what we read? Okay. All right. So it was a month earlier that I suggested a while ago, I'm thinking. So, and let's see, 30, 40, 40, 40. So, first month in the second year on the first day. First month, first day. Okay, all right. So first day. And so when we come to Numbers, it's the second month in the first day. 1 month later in the process is where we are in the book of Numbers there. And getting back on your page there, on the chronology there, just to kind of organize our thoughts a little bit in the process. And I get organized here, we just have a wonderful time. All right, chronology, where did you go? There you are. Numbers begins 1 month later after the tabernacle was laid. The book of Numbers, number C, about 38 years. We'll actually find out it's really around 39, close to it when we get to making some comparison. And a good comparison of that is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1 and verse 3. Let's take the time just to turn to Deuteronomy while you're holding your place there. And just for the purpose of noting the date and the comparison of it and kind of putting things in order. Because sometimes I used to always have the idea, well, here's Exodus and over here's Numbers, and there's a long time between the two as such, but that's not the case at all in the process. Deuteronomy chapter 1, by the way, in verse 2 says there's 11 days journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir and to Kadesh Barnea. We'll find the Israelites making that journey. And just 11-day journey from Mount Horeb, which is another word for Sinai, in the process. And so point number D on that is going to be that the first 14 chapters of the book of Numbers can basically be placed in the framework of these first 11 days. And when we get into chapter 13, 14, we find that the Israelites, the spies, as we call them, are going in the land. They'll be in the land for 40 days. But all of these events that we're talking about here in the early part of the book of Numbers are pretty well confined to that very brief period of time in the process. Verse 3 in Deuteronomy 1 says, it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, that Moses spake unto the children of Israel according to all that the Lord God had said unto him, and commandment to them. So we come to the end of the 40 years period, when God speaks through Moses, Israelites, says in the 40th year, 11th month, first day of the month. And so you got 40 from 11/1/40, if you want to put it that way, all the way back to 2 and second year, first month. So long time in the process. So right at close to that. So from Sinai to Kadesh is 11 days. And verse number E talks about 38 years of wandering. That's going to be covered in chapters 15 through 19. And that'll be an interesting section, if you will. And so that, and then the process goes on. A new nation has come into existence after the wandering in 40 years. Then beginning verse 20 on through the end of the book has to do with matters pertaining to the Israelites prior to their going into the land of Canaan. All right, let's go to chapter 4 and think about chapter 1 just a minute as we get to chapter 4. And chapter 1 through 10, the book of Numbers talks about the preparation for the departure from Sinai, getting ready to go. And they're located in the wilderness of Sinai. God tells Moses and Aaron, and they choose one chief person from each of the 12 tribes to number the children of Israel from what age? age 20 and up, and able to go to war. And so that put the parameters on that particular place. And the total number ended up being 603,550. Okay? And so that's what we have basically in the first chapter. And so from chapter 1 through 10 is preparation. Chapter 1 is they're numbered. Chapter 2, we have the position of the tribes around the tabernacle. And you might remember that there's position in 3 tribes on each side of the tabernacle except the front of it. And there's the east side, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. That is on the front of it, by the way. The south side is Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. And the west side is Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. North side is Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. And the Levites, of course, where are they going to be located? Remember, they're going to be located in the middle of the camp. So they'll be around the tabernacle too in the process. So we need to be sure and remember the 3 sons of Levi, and they are Kohath and Gershon, and who else? Merari is the way I say his name. I don't know how Mama called him when she called him, but that's the way I say it. And Merari. And the Kohathites of the Levites, they're going to be on the south side. The Gershonites are going to be on the west side. The Merarites are going to be on the north side. And in the front part of the tabernacle is going to be Moses and Aaron. Of course, their people. Chapter 3, we talked about the Levites being numbered by their family. Anybody remember what was the total number of the Levites? How much? 22,000. 22,000 Levites are numbered there. The process, and these are the sons numbered by the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And what was the age limitation on numbering the Levites? How old? Well, that's how old they served, but when they were actually numbered, they would begin from numbering their age from age what? Yeah, 1 month. Then 1 month. 1 month, and upward from that particular place. 22,000. And the reason that's important because the Levites were going to serve and take the place of whom? Of who? Firstborn. And how many more firstborn were numbered than there were Levites? 273. And so they didn't have a Levite to match the firstborn, so they had to pay the redemption price, and that was how much? How many shekels? 5 shekels according to the tabernacle and such, and do that. And so in the first 3 chapters of the book of Numbers, we have simply the idea of the number of the Israelites, we have the idea of the position around the tabernacle, and we have the idea of the Levites being numbered, and they're going to be offered a course. So in the number chapter 4, we have this numbering, and going to give some duties that's going to take place relative to the work of these Levites and what they're doing. Chapter 4, numbering and the duties of Kohath, Gershon, and Merari. So the first round is the duties of the sons of Kohath. And again, the pattern of the language is such that, you just kind of have one statement given, then the next comes up with the next son. You have basically the same wording, and so it's not difficult. And so how they were to be numbered according to verse 3 from what age? Here, 30 years old and upward, go all the way up to what age? 50. I don't know about these fellows retiring at age 50 now. But that's the limitation on it. Here's a service, verse 4. And verse 4, here's a service of the sons of Kohath, if you will. And you might just put a note down on that these are matters which are going to have to do with the internal items of the tabernacle. What's inside? Let's see if that's the case. And so verse 5, the camp setteth forth, Aaron shall come, his sons, they shall take down the covering veil, cover the ark of testimony. So when the tabernacle is going to be moved, what veil are they going to take down? One between the holy place, the most holy place. Who's going to take it down? Aaron. What's he going to do with it? What's he going to cover? Something, isn't it? Cover the Ark of the Covenant. That's his job, if you will. And on top of that, he's going to put the covering of badger skins. Badger skins is very prominent in the tabernacle. And then he would spread over it a blue cloth. So you have the curtain off the tabernacle, and on top of that curtain you have badger skins, and on top of that you have a blue cloth. Looks to me like that ark is pretty well covered. And you know what I mean? And if you will. And then look at verse 7. Upon the table of showbread, spread a cloth of blue, and put on there on the dishes, the spoons, the bowls, the cover withal, and continual bread, and spread over them a cloth of scarlet, and cover the same with a covering of what? Badger skin. Take a blue cloth and cover the candlestick of the light. That's the candlestick. And his tongs, the snuff dishes, and all the oil vessels thereof wherewith they minister unto it. So take care of the ark, showbread, candle. What about the golden altar, verse 11? That would be the one that would stand before the curtain. Spread a cloth of blue, cover it with badger skins, take it all the instruments of the ministry, where the minister the sanctuary, and you cover them with a blue cloth, covering of badger skins, and shall put them on a bar. What do you mean put them on a bar? Do what, Beth Jane? Yeah, if there's staves they would carry. I think it probably have reference to the carrier. Yeah, how to carry it. How did they carry? What do we know when they constructed the Ark of the Covenant? They constructed the table of showbread, and they constructed the altar. What did they put on the four corners of those things? Put some rings on it. Yeah, some rings. And those rings had a purpose. They had staves to go through them. And we're going to find out a little bit later, they're going to be put to use. The Kohathites are not going to have some of the amenities that the other two had. The process. And so, verse 15, when Aaron shall make an end of the covering of the sanctuary, and the sons of Kohath shall come to bear it, and they shall not touch any holy thing, lest they die. These things are the burden of the sons of Kohath. So the first part of this chapter has to do with matters pertaining to the internal items of the tabernacle. You got the Ark of the Covenant, you got the curtain, you got the candlestick, you got the showbread, you got the altar of incense inside. And the Kohathites are the one who are going to have responsibility for that. And can't touch them. Can't touch them. So Aaron and his sons, they're going to take care of covering them up in the process. Verses 21 through 28, we have the duties of Gershon, again, from age 30 to 50. And you might make a note on this. The duties of Gershon had to do with the external items of the tabernacle. I just make a note out in my margin on those. I should have put them in the text, I guess. And they were, according to verses 24 through 26, they were to bear the curtains, the coverings, the hangings, all their cords, all the instruments, and that they would do that. So that's their responsibility. 24 says, this is the service of the families of the Gershonites to serve, bear the curtains of the tabernacle congregation is covering of the badger skin that's upon it, and hanging of the door of the tabernacle. The tabernacle was covered with badger skin, among other things. And so the covering of that tabernacle, and the Gershonites, these are they who would have the responsibility of taking care of that in the process. And then on down verses 29 through 33, we have the duties, responsibilities of Merari, the sons of Merari. And I make this note relative to them. Their duties had to do with the superstructure of the tabernacle, the actual framing of it, if you will. And 30 years old and upward, again, the same thing in the process. And they were responsible for things such as boards and bars and pillars and sockets of the tabernacle and pillars of the court and their sockets, all the pins and the cords. When you go back and read about the construction of the tabernacle, you know they have boards you put up in that thing. Who's going to carry those things? You got all the on the outer courts. You got all the silver pillars, the posts in. You got silver pillars with the board sitting in them on the thing. And so here's the Lord arranged this in such a way that not one particular item in any fashion or form was overlooked in it. Drop down around about verse 31, 32. This is the charge of their burden. It says the boards of the tabernacle, the bars thereof, and we think probably having to do with the staves that would use to carry those things. Pillars thereof, the sockets thereof were some manner of carrying them anyway. Pillars of the court round about, their sockets, the pins and the cords and all the instruments with all their service. And by name you shall reckon the instruments of the charge of their burden. Verse 33, this is the service of the families of the sons of Merari, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and they work under the hand. Who's going to be the overseeing one in them? Be Ithamar. Ithamar, of course, is one of Aaron's sons. Good thing to know, Ithamar. And by the way, Ithamar also was given the oversight of the work of the sons of Gershon. And when it comes to Kohathites, it was Eleazar. And so here's the son of Aaron, Eleazar, is the one who would oversee that. And so in verses 34 through 49, we have the numbering of the sons of Kohath, Gershon, and Merari, ages 50 above in the process, and after their families, after the household. And verse 36 of the Kohathites there, 2,750. And he goes on down. Each one of them, verse 38, talks about the sons of Gershon, numbered them throughout their families by the house of their father, same language. And they were 2,630. On down to about verse 42, you have the sons of Merari, by the house of their fathers, 30 years old and upward, 3,200, verse 44. And had a total number, according to verses 46 through 49, of how many? 8,000, verse 48, 8,544 score. 8,580. And look at 49. This is a phrase that we find frequently in Numbers. According to the commandment of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, everyone according to his service and according to his burden. Thus were they numbered of him as the Lord commanded Moses. So we have the Levites, their sons, their duties, responsibilities designated, and they've been duly numbered also in the process. So come to chapter 5, has a little bit of turn in the process, talks about matters pertaining to purity, and there, removing defilement from the camp. And verses 1 through 4 talks about if anybody is unclean, what's to be happen to them, either male or female. Put them without the camp. And why do you suppose they would do that? Do what, JJ? Yeah, okay. Sanitary would be one thing. And if you have a fever or something like that, you don't want to get, I don't know whether they had to wear a mask or not. I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, they were put out because they were not clean. Doesn't mean that they were necessarily evil or something like that, but they had a problem in the process and it had to be dealt with, and so that's what they do. And look at verses 5 through 10, talks about when trespasses are made. And when a man or woman, verse 6, shall commit any sin that men commit to do a trespass against the Lord, and that person be guilty. And here's the process, verse 7, they'll confess their sin. And then it says in verse 7, he shall recompense his trespass with the principal thereof. What's he to add to it? 1/5 part. Wonder what would happen if we passed one of our laws if somebody goes out and robs a store or something, that they have to restore what they robbed plus 1/5 part to it. Might get their attention a little bit, you reckon? And so, What about verse 8? If they have no kinsman to reckon the trespass to, which seems to indicate that the kinsmen are not alive anymore, then who gets the restitution? The priest doesn't. Yeah, the priest gets it. It becomes theirs in the process there. Then there's a kind of interesting law, verses 11 through 31, the rest of that chapter, recognizes the law of jealousy. And that's when a man becomes jealous of his wife and supposing that the wife has gone apart and committed a trespass against him in a sexual way. And no witness there in the process, but the husband, he has his doubts about it, I guess would be one way to put it, called the spirit of jealousy in verse 14. And here's what he's to do. He's going to bring his wife to the priest, verse 15, and bring her offering for her, the 10th part of an ephah of barley meal, for no oil, put frankincense thereon, for it is an offering of jealousy, an offering of memorial, bringing the iniquity to remembrance. Memorial offering brings something to remembrance. That's what memorials do, isn't it? We have memorials, and they bring things back to our remembrance, whether it's good or bad as such. But anyway. And what's going to happen? Well, the priest is going to take the holy water, that was water in the tabernacle, and then he's going to take some dust out of the floor of the tabernacle, put that dust in the holy water. Sounds like a good drink, doesn't it? And called it the bitter water in the latter part of verse 18. Then he's going to charge the woman with an oath if she has been guilty of that, and if she has gone aside from her husband, and she's going to charge a woman with an oath of curse in verse 21. And the Lord shall make a curse and an oath upon thee when thy Lord doth make thy thigh to rot and thy belly to swell. So this woman is going to be required to drink this holy water with dust out of the floor of the tabernacle on it. And if she's guilty, what's that going to have to do to her? It's going to belly is swelled and her thigh will rot. It's kind of hard for me to picture that, but that's it. And of course, if she's not guilty, then that will not have that effect upon her, and she'll be deemed that. But this is what's called the law of jealousy, the latter part of chapter 5 of the book here. So, chapter 6 talks about the law of the Nazarite. I put in your notes there an insert on vows, which is taken from Thomas Hartwell Horn. He's right on Introduction to the Scriptures, that great Old Testament volume, if you will. Let's just look briefly at that, get some idea of it, because it's not all that involved. It just takes a little time. Number 1 talks about its religious engagement or promise voluntarily undertaken, not required, and voluntarily undertaken. Israel, they were binding. If you had took one, it was binding. And the priest, of course, had authority to enforce it. Point C talks about some other passages which are major relative to this particular point. And in order for that vow to be valid, had to be, according to chapter 30 verse, had to be uttered with the mouth. So you couldn't just take a silent vow, you had to actually utter it with your mouth. And it must be the one who makes it must be in his own power, and he must be competent to make the obligation. And so he has to be able to do what he is vowing to do, if you will. The things vowed are to be devoted to God must be honestly obtained. So if you're going to vow to give something to God in service, it must be something that was honestly obtained in the process. I like the idea of competent to undertake his obligation. This has no direct connection with that, but down through the years, from time to time, we'll have young people come and want to be baptized into Christ. They've been brought up, they've been taught, and that's what they want to do. And oftentimes the preacher's asked to talk with that young person. And so if you talk with a young person like that, what would you say to her? Is it one of the things that I've always done down through the years is this. Of course, you talk to them and commend them for what they're doing. And that because you don't want to discourage them in any form or fashion whatsoever. But one of the key issues on that young person obeying the gospel of Christ is whether or not he is competent or able to carry out the duties and responsibility of one who is a Christian. And so that would be, to me, that's always been a key thought in that particular area. And so most of the time when we go through that, mom and dad, if they're there, they say, well, we never thought about that before. So, all right. But you know, if somebody becomes a Christian, then that individual has some responsibilities that they are expected to be able to discharge. And it may be a case where a young person is fully capable of doing that, but it may be a case because of yet immaturity or age or whatever, they're not able to do that. Then, of course, that becomes a real issue in the process. Anyway, Nazarite vow, you had to be able to do it. Two sides, it talks about two sorts of vows mentioned here. We're not going to spend much time. The cherem, which is the most that, it was a vow of such a nature that if it was made, it really couldn't be redeemed. The other was called the Nedarim, common vows. The Nazarite vow was of this particular category, and some of the restrictions on that, if you just look on your page there for number 4B, abstain from any wine, food, or any other. Among these were the Nazarite vow. Anything that came from the vine, if you made a vow, a Nazarite vow, then you could not partake of any product that came from the vine, in any form or shape, whatever, even the raisins. Couldn't even do the raisins. So let's look at your text there in chapter 6 and verse 3. Separate himself wine, strong drink, no vinegar or wine, vinegar, strong drink. Drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes or dry. The word liquor, by the way, simply means the juice of the fruit thereof. And the days of separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree at all in the process of it. And look at verse 5. No razor shall come upon his head until the days be fulfilled. He shall be holy and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. And verse 6, he shall come in contact with no dead body. If he does come in contact with a dead body, even if it's a mother or sister or brother, verse 7, and there, and or if someone suddenly should die in his presence where he doesn't have a choice in that, then he has to just start over again on his time. A Nazarite vow is usually made for a peculiar time. Somebody would vow a vow, and that vow would be, he might vow himself in service to the Lord in a particular way for X number of days or weeks or months, and like that, or he might vow to do something, you know, and that has a time limit on the process. But if he is defiled by coming in contact with a dead person, then he'd have to start over. Verse 12 says, he shall consecrate unto the Lord the days of his separation, shall bring a lamb first year trespass offering, but the days that were before shall be lost because his separation was defiled. So he has to start over, if you will. Verse 13, the law of the Nazarites, the day's separation fulfilled, he be brought into the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Offer his offering to the Lord, and one he lamb, first year without blemish, for a burnt offering, one ewe lamb of the first year without blemish for a sin offering, and one ram without blemish for a peace offering. And he has a basket of unleavened bread, and wafers of unleavened bread anointed with oil in their meat offering or their drink offering, and the priest is going to bring him before the Lord. And so the point, I think, is simply this: at the conclusion of a Nazarite vow, there was a rather elaborate process by and through in which that vow is recognized as being completed. So, shave his head of the Nazarite when he, number 18, that's when he'll shave his head. Take those hair, put it in the fire which is under the peace offering. And the priest then is going to take the shoulder of the ram as a wave offering and put them in the hands of the Nazarite after the hair of his separation is saved. Okay, verse 21. The law of the Nazarite who is vowed a vow is offered unto the Lord for separation, beside that his hand shall get according to the vow which he vowed. So he must do after the law of separation. Numbers chapter 6, 22 through 25 are rather familiar verses, by the way. You've probably heard these verses brought up and quoted frequently. At what occasion? Where do you oftentimes hear these? Huh? Yeah. And funeral services, graveside services, oftentimes preacher will use them. And speak unto Aaron on this wise, verse 24, the Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee, be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. They shall put my name upon the children of Israel. I will bless them. I like the idea where it records there, they shall put my name upon the children of Israel. What does that mean? God's name is put upon the children of Israel. Do what, Lauren? They're his. I think that's the whole idea. We wear the name of Christ because we are his. We are his. We belong to it. That's chapter 7 talks about the offering of the princes of the children of Israel. It's a rather lengthy chapter, however. The words are not different, if you will. Let's just make one or two things particular about it. Verse 1 says that on the day that Moses had fully set up the tabernacle and sanctified it, all the instruments thereof, both the altar and such, it says in verse 2 that the princes of Israel, think back in terms of those who were chosen to help with the number of the Israelites back in chapter 1, who were the princes of the tribes that were over them that were numbered, offering. They brought their offering before the Lord. Here's what they brought: 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen, a wagon for 2 of the princes, and for each one an ox. They brought them before the Lord. So you got 12 princes, 6 wagons, that's 2 for each one, and for each one an ox. They had 12 oxen. And so here's what they're to do with them. Verse 5, that they may do the service of the tabernacle congregation, and they shall give them unto whom? Levites. To every man according to his service. Think about Kohath, Gershon, and Merari. Their services, their commitments, if you will. Look what he says in verse 7. 2 wagons, 4 oxen he gave to the sons of Gershon, according to the service. And Gershon's the one who had to do with the exterior of the wagon. Verse 8 says, 4 wagons and 8 oxen were given to the sons of Merari, according to their service. Well, Gershon gets 2, Merari gets 4. What about Kohath, verse 9? Kohath didn't get any. He didn't get any. There's a reason he didn't get any. It says, because the service of the sanctuary belongeth unto them, and they're going to bear the elements of the sanctuary. How are they going to move those? On their shoulders, are they? They're going to put those staves or those bars in those rings. It's on the Ark of the Covenant and on the table of showbread and on the altar of incense. That's how they're going to move them. And so it's important. Princes offered for dedicating the altar of that day. It was anointed the princes. And let's see, verse 12. He that offered his offering the first day. We're going to do it. Nashon, son of Amminadab, here's what his offering is. Verse 13. 1 silver charger, the weight of 130 shekels. 1 silver bowl, 70 shekels. After the shekel of the sanctuary, both of them were full of fine flour mingled with oil meat offering. 1 spoon of 10 shekels of gold. 1 young bullock. 1 ram. 1 lamb of the first year for a burnt offering. 1 kid of the he goats for a sin offering. And for a sacrifice of peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he goats, 5 lambs of the first year. That was the offering. Now then, verse 18. Talk about the offerings of Nethanel. And you go down through, what's the difference between Nethanel's offering, just scanning down through there, and what was first offering? What's the difference? Not any, is there? Not any. So we had Nashon. Nethanel offered the same thing, Second day. Third day, Eliab comes up, and he made his offering. What was the difference between Eliab's offering and the others? Same thing. The wording is just really identical all the way down through. The fourth day was Elisha, verse 30. Verse 36, the fifth day was Shelumiel. And notice again, for example, verse 37 is offering one silver charger, the weight of 130 shekels, one silver bowl, 70 shekels, both of them full of fine flour meat, one golden tuna, 10 shekels, one young bullock, one ram, one lamb. The language is exactly identical for each and every one of the offerings, all the way down through the chapter. Verse 42, the sixth day, Eliasaph, his offering was identical, if you will. Verse 48, the seventh day, Elishama. You read down there, his offering is identical, same. Silver charger, 130 shekels. Silver bowl, 70 shekels, all the way down, same thing. Verse 54, the eighth day, Gamaliel. His offering was identical, if you will. Verse 60, the ninth day, Abidin. His offering was the same. On verse 66, the 10th day, Ahiezer. His offering was identical, if you will. Verse 72, the 11th day, Pagiel. And his offering also was identical to the others. And I knew I skipped a page there somewhere. And so where did Enon, son of Enon, there? Verse 78, Hiram, the son of Enon. And verse 84, this is the dedication of the altar, and the day that it was anointed by the prince of Israel, 12 charges of silver, 12 and 12. And he goes through and gives a summation, really, of the total of the prince's offerings are numbered in verses 84 through 88. So 84, he talks about 12 charges of silver. You know, each one brought 130 shekels, 12 silver bowls. So you have the same items, but every one of them now in numbers of 12. All the oxen, all that. And so you get down to verse 88. It says, and all the oxen of the sacrifice were 24,000, and bullocks and rams 60, the he-goats 60, the lambs. This was the dedication of the altar after that it was anointed. So there's the offering of the 12 chiefs of the tribes there. Look at verse 89, if you would. Moses enters the tabernacle. And he heard the voice of one speaking. Who was speaking? God. From where was he speaking? At the mercy seat, didn't it? Mercy seat there. And he spake unto him, and so when you get into chapter 8, you have some instructions given by the Lord to Moses. And in chapter 8, we have the instructions for the lighting of the 7 lamps on the candlestick. And you go back to the book of Exodus, chapter 25, you can get the details of the construction of the candlestick. But when you light the candle, lamps there, and Aaron did so, it says verse 3, he lighted the lamps thereof over against the candlestick as the Lord commanded. Verse 4 says, the work of the candlestick was beaten gold, shaft thereof up under the flowers thereof, according to the pattern which the Lord had showed Moses. So he made the candlestick. And the Lord said unto Moses, pick up at verse 5, and the process talks about the consecration now of the Levites. The Levites have been numbered. They've been given particular responsibilities. They have specific places where they are to encamp around the tabernacle. And so they're going to be consecrated or committed to the Lord's service here in this particular way. So here's what's offered by the Lord. Verses 5 through 8, 2 bullocks, meat offerings before the tabernacle. Okay. Yeah, verse 7 says, thus shalt thou do unto them to cleanse them, sprinkle water purifying upon them, and let them shave all their flesh, let them wash their clothes, and make themselves clean. Then let them take a young bullock, this meat offering, even the fine flour, if you will. kind of a aside, I guess, on that. When the Levites were going to come in to the presence of the Lord to do the service over there, did it make any difference what they looked like? Had to be clean, didn't they? Had to clean themselves up a little bit. So it makes a difference, I think, in the process. Verse 9, bring the Levites before the tabernacle of the congregation, gather the whole assembly of the children together, and bring the Levites before the Lord, the children of Israel. Verse 11 says, Aaron shall offer the Levites. Aaron shall offer what? Offer the Levites before the Lord for an offering of the children of Israel. So the Levites are offered unto the Lord, and they're offered for the children of Israel, that they may execute the service. And so the Levites will lay their hands upon the heads of the bullocks, and one for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering, to make an atonement. And in verse 13, thou shalt set the Levites before Aaron, before his sons, and offer them for an offering unto the Lord. Look at verse 14. Thus shalt thou separate the Levites from among the children of Israel, and the Levites shall be what? Mine. The Levites now are God's. After that shall the Levites go in to do the service of the tabernacle, and thou shalt cleanse them and offer them for an offering, verse 16, for they are holy, given unto me from among the children of Israel, instead of, verse 16, instead of what? Everyone that has openeth every womb, instead of the firstborn. So the Levites now have been offered to God, consecrated, they belong to Him, and all the firstborn now who are born, which would ordinarily be that which belonged to God, the Levites should take their place. Verse 17, all the firstborn of the children of Israel are mine, both man and beast. On the day that I smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified them for myself. Verse 18, I have taken the Levites for all the firstborn of the children of Israel. Verse 19, I have given the Levites as a gift to whom? Aaron and his sons, to do the service of the children of Israel in the tabernacle. And that in verse 20, Moses and Aaron, all the congregation of the children of Israel, did to the Levites according unto all that the Lord commanded Moses concerning the Levites, so did the children of Israel. And verse 21 says the Levites were purified. They washed their clothes, and Aaron offered them as an offering before the Lord, that is, the Levites, not the clothes. And Aaron made an atonement for them to cleanse them, and after that went the Levites in to do their service in the tabernacle of the congregation. And verse 23 says this, for 24, this is that belongeth unto the Levites from 20 and 5 years old, and upward shall they go in to wait upon the service of the tabernacle, and from the age of 50 years they shall cease waiting. So they'll serve from age 25 to 50. You might notice back in chapter 4, said the age there that they began to say was 30. Perhaps the difference is that had to do with the process of constructing and raising up the tabernacle. This has to do more specifically with their service as those set aside. So it seems to be an established thing. All right, brethren, we came up one chapter short tonight. I'll blame you for that, okay? Chapter 9 we'll look at next week and finish up this first section of the book of Numbers. Talks about the Passover going to be observed. Really all it says is this: the Passover is to be observed on the 14th day of the first month at evening. Circumstance, if a man is defiled by reason of dead body, he cannot keep the Passover, or if someone's out of town, we say, away, cannot do it. What do? Who knows what they have to do? They come the second month, don't they? On the fourth, come the second month on the 14th day. And that's so. That's it. All right. Brother Ralph, you feel like we're the prayer for? Just bow our heads, please.